Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. That second half. That second half makes you think Green Bay has the ability to be the best team in the National Football League. And this is not a channel typically where we overreact in the moment, right? Or where we say stuff for the shock value of it. I'm watching that second half, though, in a game where Green Bay trailed 16-7 at the break, and they go 5 for 5 on offense in the second half. They score on every single possession. Touchdown, field goal. The defense comes up with a turnover. Takeaways have been lacking this year. They get to Aaron Rodgers, Rashawn Gary, 2 sacks. Micah Parsons had 1 in the second half. And you're watching a team that put together a complete half of football. And I know Pittsburgh had like a late garbage time touchdown, but they stopped the 2. Like, that was about as complete offensively and defensively that you can get. It was that good for Green Bay in the second half. Just unbelievable. They beat the Steelers 35-25. We're going to bounce around like we always do on the instant reaction videos. Let me know what you guys and gals think as the Packers move to 5-1-1 in the season. They'll head back to Lambeau Field to welcome in the Carolina Panthers next week, and what is certainly going to have all the smells of a trap game. You take on Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football on the road. Then you have the Panthers at home. Then the following week, you have the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who beat you twice last year, Week 1 and in the postseason. And that's a primetime standalone game, too. We'll get to Carolina, obviously, throughout the week. I want to know, and I'm not saying this at all as an embellishment or in an arrogant manner, there was a part of me that just like slightly felt bad for Aaron Rodgers in that second half. Jordan Love looked like a superstar in this game tonight. 29-37, 363 touchdowns. This is a game where if you looked at the box score for Jordan Love, you'd be like, holy crap, Jordan Love was incredible. And you could not have watched the game and looked at the box score and it would actually tell you the truth. There were a couple of those prayers. There was one, I believe it was a third down to Tucker Kraft, like a 45-yard reception in the second half. There were a couple of those. There was one to Watson down inside the 10-yard line where Love just kind of like takes a shot down the field and his receivers, or in the one instance with Kraft, his tight end, make plays and then get a bunch of yak. But those, prayers, those 50-50 shots that he takes were few and far between in that second half. There were a lot of lasers from Jordan Love. There was a confident, competent quarterback playing the position at the highest of levels that we see in the National Football League. Jordan Love was slicing and dicing a secondary that has been sliced and diced by quite a few quarterbacks this year, but you still have to go out and do it. And Jordan Love looked the part in a game where it had playoff atmosphere. You felt like the stakes were really, really high. Some can say, it's just 1 of 17. This one meant more. Nobody will admit that throughout the week when you talk to the coaches, the players on both sides. This one did mean more. This was Aaron Rodgers against the Green Bay Packers for the first time ever, for the first time and probably the only time in his entire career. And there was a small part of me that, honest to God, felt just a little bad for Aaron Rodgers. And it wasn't because of what Jordan Love was doing. It was because so badly he wanted to match what Jordan Love was doing in that second half. But quite frankly, look, I put a video out about Rodgers this week and how the offense has kind of come to be for Pittsburgh this year. And then I talked about some of those points in the Final Thoughts video as well. Certainly don't go rewatch those now because they're all moot points because the game has now occurred. But a lot of that stuff that's happened with Pittsburgh in a 6-game sample size entering this game tonight popped up again. It's short passes. It's an offensive line that has trouble protecting Aaron Rodgers. It's Aaron Rodgers, who I believe was 34th out of 40 quarterbacks who have started a game this year in scramble percentage. He was at like 2.5 or 2.7%. I know they said on the broadcast, like, Aaron Rodgers felt like his mobility, at this point this season is better than it's been in the last 2 years. Well, that's coming off that torn Achilles against the Jets. This is a 41-year-old quarterback who has lost, most of his mobility at this point, and that Achilles injury a couple of years ago certainly doesn't help things. And so he's pretty confined to the pocket, and we saw that a lot tonight, and Green Bay kept him within the pocket. They got pressure on him when they needed to. Rodgers was sacked 3 times. He was pressured many more. And Jordan Love in the offensive line for Green Bay kept him upright. He wasn't sacked. He got rid of the ball in a timely manner. Guys were running open. Pittsburgh had to lean on what it's tried to lean on all year, which is these short little quick passes, and you hope that DK Metcalf can rack up a bunch of yards after the catch. You hope guys throughout the offense like Calvin Austin can do it as well, and they just weren't really able to. Like, things were pretty well bottled up all night long. Green Bay, I thought for the most part, on defense was just really, really stout. In that first half, it was bend, don't break. It was, field goal for Pittsburgh before they got that touchdown. I believe that's how it went, right? Wasn't it 9? Because it was 9-7, I believe. Yeah, and then Pittsburgh gets that 9-play, 84-yard drive to go up 16-7. Green Bay misses a field goal. I'm not worried about Brandon McManus. He was short from, 57, and then he hooked a 44-yarder. Made 2 short ones in the second half. I'm not worried about him. That's first game back, coming back from an injury. That's probably still in the back of his mind. He'll shake it off. He's a veteran. He's not a young kicker like Braden Narvison or Anders Carlson, who a couple of misses early in the game can really shake them to their core. Brandon McManus has been in the league for quite some time now. I'm not really worried about him. But I thought the defense in the first half going bend, don't break, and then just really believing that Pittsburgh was going to do what they've done all year. And that was Rodgers will take a couple of deep shots, hope to connect, keep a defense honest. But a lot of what Pittsburgh's had to do because of the offensive line and because of what they have on that offense is get the ball out of Rodgers' hand quick. Otherwise, it's not going to be pretty. And Green Bay was able to just kind of read that, react quickly, and feast on it all night long. I will note 2 things about the defense as well. Again, this is Instant Reaction. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. It costs you nothing. It helps me immensely as I try to build up the channel. I obviously they don't have snap counts out right after the game. I didn't see Nate Hobbs on the field. I saw a cornerback in Carrington Valentine who was a former 7th-round pick out of Kentucky 3 years ago. This is his 3rd year. And Carrington Valentine is a perfect example of a guy who has just climbed the ladder. 7th-round pick, you're not guaranteed anything. You're not guaranteed a roster spot. You're not guaranteed a practice squad spot. You have to grind things out. Carrington Valentine did that from the jump his rookie year. Now, injuries in his rookie season elevated him into a starter's role when Eric Stokes, Jair Alexander went out, and he performed well in a starting role as a rookie. In second year, kind of in and out. This year, they bring in Nate Hobbs. He's a slot, but they're going to have him play the boundary. There's 2 things in this. Carrington Valentine, to me, looked the part of the best cornerback on Green Bay's team. Keyshawn Nixon has that label. He has that title. He has struggled the last few weeks. He struggled at times in this one again. A brutal pass interference call where he didn't get his head around, a couple of catches allowed in spots where it's just like, come on. Now, he made a nice PBU in the second half late. I think it was the second or third to last drive. But Keyshawn Nixon has been struggling, and I have harped the last couple of weeks when I see Carrington Valentine get, I think it was 2 snaps total a week ago, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, with how Nate Hobbs has played, and the guy's probably more comfortable in the slot, but if you put him in the slot, then Javon Bowler doesn't have a spot, and Javon Bowler's been pretty damn good. And so what do you do with Nate Hobbs? Because this is a guy who signed a pretty lucrative deal in free agency, and it's a franchise, any franchise front office wouldn't want to admit 6 games in, this being the 7th tonight, into a new multi-year deal, like, hey, we got this one wrong with this guy, or at least for now, it doesn't look good. And I think it takes a lot for everyone involved, Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley, Goody, to put pride, put ego aside and say, you know what? At this point, Carrington Valentine is a way better option for us on the outside, on the boundary at corner than Nate Hobbs. I did not see Nate Hobbs much tonight. I don't know if he was out there at all. Which is kind of interesting because Jeff Hafley was asked about Hobbs during the week, and he said, like, glowing things about Hobbs and how he knows he's due for a big game and he knows he's going to step up and perform. It'll be interesting once the snap counts come out on Monday, usually is when I see them. I'm even looking through right now the box score, see if there was even a tackle or anything. I don't see Nate Hobbs' name. And Carrington Valentine looked the freaking part. Carrington Valentine played with confidence, aggression. I know that late touchdown for Roman Wilson got called a touchdown, but even in a spot there where you're up 16 late in the game and it's like, oh, you could just let him have it and be like, whatever, miscommunication on the back end, they get the touchdown. He goes in there and tries breaking it up, and to the naked eye when I'm watching that, I thought it might be an incomplete pass. And Carrington Valentine was awesome tonight. and he is a pit bull. Like we talk about, like Nate Hobbs is a pit bull. So is Keyshawn Nixon. Like they play with confidence. They play with an attitude. One thing I loved, again, we're going to bounce around. Green Bay didn't let Pittsburgh push them around. There was a lot of chippiness. There were late flags. There were personal fouls. We saw Quay Walker. Quay Walker, a guy who was ejected. I don't want to do him wrong here. Wasn't it twice though as a rookie? Quay Walker was ejected in games for personal fouls, things of that nature. He shoved a trainer from Detroit in one of the incidents. Quay Walker drew a personal foul penalty tonight on DK Metcalf. Jawing back and forth, and DK goes into the helmet, pokes his eye, did whatever he did, and Quay Walker didn't retaliate. That's huge. But Green Bay didn't let that happen without getting, their lick back as well. The chippiness went both ways. We have seen for years, for whatever reason, for whatever regime it's been in Green Bay for the Packers, in some of these big moments, like I'm thinking about playoff games against San Francisco. I'm thinking about even some regular season games the past couple years before week 1 this year against Detroit, where Green Bay gets bullied, Green Bay gets pushed around, and they don't respond. They don't, they just let the bully them. And Chris Collinsworth, I think, brought it up in the broadcast. Like, Green Bay didn't let the bully them. And we saw that in week 1 this year against Detroit. And it was a major question mark for me. Dan Campbell, physicality. What does he say in his introductory press conference a few years ago? Like, we're going to bite off kneecaps, things of that nature. But they play like that. Like, Detroit is in your face, plays a physical brand of football. And Green Bay took it to him in week 1 and played as the aggressor, but played confidently and played like the bully. This team we saw tonight against Pittsburgh not only didn't get bullied, Green Bay was more than happy to try to play the part of the bully. And I just think that has been missing. There's a fine line with it where you can't cross over it and then rack up these personal fouls, tauntings, late hits, things of that nature. But, man, we have seen Green Bay defenses especially, I would say, for quite some time, in big moments just give up a ton of yards, touchdowns, and big spots, big games. Again, I'm thinking about a couple playoff games against San Francisco. You go all the way back to the one where Colin Kaepernick and Frank Gore ran wild in a playoff game against Green Bay, and they were the bully, the aggressor, and Green Bay just rolled over and was like, all right, we're done. I love seeing a team that has that chip, that has that edge, that isn't going to let another team push them around. You need a little bit of that. You need some of that, and I think this team has it. And Carrington Valentine is one of those guys who brings it to the table. So I'm so happy with Carrington Valentine because I have been pleading for a couple of weeks now. This dude at a minimum should be getting a 50-50 split with Hobbs. Partially because Hobbs, he just hasn't delivered yet. Doesn't mean it's a failure of a signing. You got to figure it out at some point, right? And hopefully Nate Hobbs will. But to see Carrington Valentine get 2 snaps a week ago, it's well, that doesn't make any sense with how Nate Hobbs has been performing and how Carrington Valentine looked, especially those first 2-3 weeks. 2 weeks, especially against Detroit and Washington to start the year, is holy crap, Carrington Valentine's playing incredible. And then that entire cornerback unit has kind of taken a hit the last couple of weeks. Carrington Valentine showed up tonight. I thought Keyshawn Nixon still struggled. I'll have to go back and rewatch. There was so much pacing done by me during this game, but again, blind eye watching it, just live reaction. I thought Keyshawn struggled, and I thought Carrington Valentine was brilliant. And I think the Packers regime, Goody, Hafley, LaFleur, for this game this week, deserve a lot of credit for saying we're going to put aside the ego, the pride. We know I got to look up his deal, the Nate Hobbs deal, and basically benching him for this game. 4 years, $48 million. I think the Packers can get out of it after 1 year or 2 years, or a lot of it. There's a lot of $16 million guaranteed. It's effectively a 1-year deal for the team with 3 one-year team options. Okay, but 4 years, $48 million, $16 million guaranteed. The last thing you want to do 6 games in going into your 7th to say, we got that one really wrong. And, the jury is still out in some aspects on Aaron Banks at left guard. Those were the 2 prized free agent acquisitions for Green Bay. Aaron Banks at left guard, Nate Hobbs at cornerback. And I think to be able to put things aside and say Carrington Valentine gives us the best chance tonight at one of those starting corner spots on the outside, and to execute it that way, and then to see Carrington live up to that, excellent from Green Bay. Absolutely excellent. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please click the subscribe button. Cost you nothing, helps me immensely. Packers take out the Steelers 35-25 in a game that I did not know how this game was going to go when I was texting with buddies even today, but in the week leading up to it. and we're trying to figure out, like, how does this one go? I said, I don't know who wins. I really don't, because as much as I had questions about Pittsburgh's offensive line and the blueprint they would have, all these quick passes and trying to get it out of Rodgers' hand quickly, because the offensive line hasn't been able to afford him a ton of time this year, and he doesn't have the mobility to really extend plays too often anymore. But you still don't know, because it's Aaron Rodgers, and he strikes me, at least, and I'm sure many of you, as he said this wasn't about revenge. He spoke glowingly about Green Bay, the city, the community, the fans, the team, Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur all week. We get that, but deep down he wanted this one bad. And if there's one thing I have learned growing up watching Aaron Rodgers when he was on this side, when he was with the Packers, it did not matter ever how many guys were hurt, how many guys were out, whether it was wide receivers, offensive line, defense. If Aaron Rodgers was under center, I always felt like Green Bay, at a minimum, had a puncher's chance. I remember a game. It was the game where Rasul Douglas picked off Kyler Murray in the end zone 5 years ago, maybe, when Kyler Murray was targeting A.J. Green. And entering that game, I think it was 6-1 Green Bay against 7-0 Arizona, and there were, like, every single possible wide receiver was out for Green Bay. But Aaron Rodgers was healthy, and I kept saying, we got Aaron Rodgers, you have a chance. And there's been so many instances of that throughout his career where I always felt like there could be chaos all around the Packers. This guy could be out, that guy could be out. They could be on a 3-game losing streak. Remember when Rodgers, like, calmed everyone down? I don't remember. I'm trying to remember the specific season and the relax. Remember, he's like, relax. And then Green Bay went on a tear, and there was another one where he said we got to win out, and then they went out in the regular season to get to the postseason. It's why going into this game, I was like, I know he's 41. I know the offensive line has struggled. I know outside of DK Metcalf, they don't have, like, a lot of burners. Like, I look at Green Bay, and we'll get to Tucker Kraft in a second. It's maybe a shame we haven't talked about Tucker Kraft and Jordan Love yet, but, we bounce around on the instant reactions. Pittsburgh's offense doesn't have as much firepower, not even close to it, not in the running game, not in the receiving game compared to Green Bay. But I kept telling myself and my buddies, like, despite all that and despite the fact that he's 41, I can't say confidently, even though they were favored by a field goal, like, man, I feel really good about Green Bay in this game. The one thing I did say to my buddies throughout the week is I feel like it's going to be a shootout. And you had 60 combined points, 35 for Green Bay, 25 for Pittsburgh. The reason I thought that would be the case is what all the data said. Pittsburgh 31st in passing yards allowed per game. I think it was 28th in yards per attempt. Jalen Ramsey's 30. Darius Slay's 34. They've been getting torched all year. They got torched again tonight. Carson Wentz threw for 350 on this defense. Joe Flacco threw for 340 on this defense this year. They faced, like, Justin Fields in week 1, who threw wild. Justin Fields had a day against this Pittsburgh secondary all the way back in week 1. There were just a lot of signs that would indicate, man, if Green Bay, if Jordan Love shows up and is the Jordan Love we think he can be, this offense should be in for a pretty damn good day. And my thought for thinking shootout is I was pretty confident Green Bay could score, but again, I was like, Rodgers isn't going to get blown out. Now, it was kind of teetering on that. You're up 16 with like 3 minutes left. Like, you can say they get that garbage time touchdown late, lose by 10. If you call it a blowout, I'm not going to argue with it, because Green Bay was up 16 and it got comfortable there in the fourth quarter, about midway through. But I didn't think Rodgers was going to come out and lose like 35-7 or 35-10, if that makes sense. That's why I was kind of feeling the shootout vibes. I mentioned Tucker Kraft, and everyone's hyping up tight end day. Pittsburgh was 31st in fantasy points allowed to tight ends this year. I talked about, like, Hunter Henry. I think it was like 7 for 90 and 2 touchdowns this year. Noah Fant had 4 for 44 and a touchdown last week against Pittsburgh, and that doesn't sound like much, but the 44 yards for Noah Fant were his most in a game this year. It was his first touchdown since week 1. Like, you look back at all these cases of what tight ends have done against Pittsburgh this year, it felt like a Tucker Kraft game. Led the team in targets, receptions, receiving yards, had 2 receiving touchdowns. Tucker Kraft was amazing. I think I've flirted with the idea multiple times this year. I'm not. I think it's more so because of Green Bay's offense. There's so many mouths to feed. We've heard LaFleur say over and over again, like, we're not going to like, even if Matthew Golden turns out to look like a number 1 receiver, there's going to be weeks where, we just share the ball on offense. That's what Green Bay does. So Tucker Kraft is at a point where I think he warrants, like, what? like, I don't want to put a specific number on it, but this dude, like, warrants at least 7 targets a week. Like, he is that freaking good. He had 9 in this game, 7 for 143 and 2 touchdowns. I flirted with the idea of saying he's no longer a star tight end. He is a true superstar, and he looked like a true superstar tight end in this one. But I think because of how the offense is built and how it navigates and how it runs and what that engine looks like underneath the hood for Green Bay's offense, there's still going to be weeks, and there's weeks for all, even the best tight ends like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews when he was in his prime, so on and so forth, where they have, 3 catches, 30 yards in a week. But I believe those sort of afternoons could be more frequent for Tucker Kraft. And it's not because of Tucker Kraft, it's because of the offense he's in. But I think he's at a point where, damn, he feels like a superstar tight end. He looks like a true superstar, like an upper echelon, top tier tight end in this league, who really, really warrants, in my opinion, like you need to have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 plays a week where it's like Tucker Kraft's the primary option. Like 5 feels really low. Like 7 or 8 where it's like Tucker Kraft's the primary option. He is that good. The yards after catch are incredible. He had that sensational, was it a 45-yard catch? He had a 59-yard. Like Tucker Kraft was awesome. He was tremendous, and I'm so close to just saying he's a superstar. Like, he's not a star, he is a superstar, and he's definitely more so leaning towards a superstar than a star at this point. Jordan Love, I mentioned the 363 touchdowns. Just awesome to see him show out like this on primetime against Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. You know the game certainly meant a lot to him, and I mean, it's going to be a very happy flight coming back home to Green Bay for the Packers after this one. Again, I'm recording right after the final, so by the time you watch this, it might be Monday, it might be Tuesday, and it's like, oh, Green Bay's already back home practicing for Carolina. But Tucker Kraft, sensational. There's so many names to mention in this one. I'll go through 3 more on offense that I want to bring up. By the way, Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We're not going to do a big deep dive, but Emmanuel Wilson, 11 carries, 61 yards. Josh Jacobs couldn't really get it going. He had 13 for 33. Still might not be 100% Josh Jacobs. Emmanuel Wilson is like, when Marshawn Lloyd comes back, whenever that is, like, that's a name we forget about because he's been hurt his entire career and he's in his 2nd season. But he's a 3rd-round pick. He's electric in the open field. He can get to space pretty quickly. You still got to believe Green Bay feels like it wants to see what it has in Marshawn Lloyd. But I think when he returns, it's not like, here's the number 2 spot. Emmanuel Wilson is trending in a direction where he is one of the better, more reliable RB2s in the NFL. Like, man, that guy came up with a play after a play after a play when they needed him. Like, could scratch out 4 to 5 yards, and it flies under the radar because of these deep shots that Love takes in the passing game and how great he and Tucker Kraft were tonight, and a couple other names I'll bring up. But Emmanuel Wilson, like, I don't think we can keep sleeping on him. He's a really, really good RB2, and I was happy for the dude tonight because he had ample opportunity. He had 3 catches for 26 yards, 11 carries for 61. I love Emmanuel Wilson. If you remember coming out of training camp, there were some people, and I don't necessarily blame them, but I guess I don't, blame isn't the right word. But like when people were doing their Packers 53-man roster predictions, some said, I think it's going to be before Lloyd was injured, before Marshawn Lloyd got injured. And people were doing their like premature 53-man roster predictions. It was like, I think it's going to be Jacobs and Marshawn Lloyd and then Chris Brooks. And I think they only keep 3 and Emmanuel Wilson's cut. And I kept Emmanuel Wilson on mine because I'm like, damn, I remember in my final 53-man roster prediction, when I got to Emmanuel Wilson as to why he made the team, I said, he's not as good of a pass blocker as Chris Brooks. He may not be as good of a receiving back as Marshawn Lloyd, and Lloyd was, of course, injured at the time. And I said, but if you want just like the best pure runner, like the guy you just turn and hand the ball to and you just trust him the most out of that group behind Josh Jacobs, it's Emmanuel Wilson, and it's not even particularly close. And I thought he had a really good night. And then 2 other names on offense. Savion Williams got his first touchdown. I don't know who had on their bingo card that Savion Williams would score a receiving touchdown before Matthew Golden this year. Golden still doesn't have one. 3 receptions, 4 yards for him on 3 targets. Kind of a weird stat line. Savion Williams, who isn't really playing many snaps on offense, had 1 target, 1 catch, 8 yards in his first NFL touchdown. Was pretty cool. And then the last name we have to bring up, Christian Watson. I mean, you and I and we all see it on display. Like what number 9 means to the offense when he's healthy, and he can absolutely take the lid off a defense. 4 catches, 85 yards on 4 targets. Had a nice one on the sideline. Had a deep one down the field going left to right inside the Pittsburgh 10 where he came back to it. You see the immediate impact. This is a guy who tore his ACL week 18 of last January. He is returning. I think they said, was it 295 or 296 days later, something like that. Like, he is returning from a torn ACL, and I know guys return more quickly from that than even what they did 7 or 8 years ago. But you're still talking about, it's not just any player on the roster. It's a receiver who relies on his speed, his top-end speed, that tore his ACL. And Christian Watson comes back, and had you not known any better, you would have assumed he's been out there all year. Like, he looked that polished. And I'm telling you, mentally, it can't be easy, your first game back from a torn ACL, to get over some of those mental hurdles. And maybe C-Watt was battling some of that. It sure didn't look like it. Like, he looked like his normal, polished Christian Watson self. And I think adding that dynamic to this offense where it's like, and you're going to get Jaden Reed back at some point. There's a lot. I keep saying there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, but it's fun. Like, it's got to be fun for Matt LaFleur to draw this stuff up. You do have to deal with personalities and egos sometimes. Like, Matthew Golden was drafted in the first round. Him not having a touchdown through 7 weeks, it stinks for him. Like, it stinks for the player, right? But those days will come. Those touchdowns will come. You just got to be patient with it. And I do think, I've said this a lot, when individual frustration can build up, winning can cure a lot of it. It really can. Like, there's listening to Matthew Golden in interviews when he's at his locker and hearing him talk to reporters doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to head back to Wisconsin tonight and, pout on the plane and be sad, mad, depressed. Same for guys like, Malik Heath had 3 catches, 29 yards. Luke Musgrave had a catch for 5 yards. They don't strike me as players who are going to be like, damn, I wish I had more. Like, this sucks. I'm going to become toxic in the locker room. Like, no, we won. We're 5-1-1. We're in first place in the NFC. And, of course, if you're in first place in the NFC, you're in first place in the NFC North. Good personality guys on the team. Yeah, I'm just looking at the standings right now. Tampa 6-2, Philly 6-2, Packers 5-1-1. Who would have thought that tie might come back to maybe help a little bit for Green Bay in the end? Who knows? Long way to go. Up and down, though, just thoroughly impressed with that second half. It was a dud in the first half. It was a dud. Once that offense settled in, it looked like one of the best in the National Football League. And Jordan Love looked like, on this night, he looked like a top 3 quarterback. Am I going to put him there with, Allen and Mahomes? No. But on this night, he looked the part, and it was incredible. And the offense, one of my buddies, Shekin, texted me, and it's a great idea to write an article about or do a video about this week. He said how did he phrase it? I'm going to find the text. He said the offense should treat the entire game like it's the second half, because the offense just comes alive in the second half. This was the most extreme example of it, with how good they were. Why can't I find his text? I can't find the one he said, but it was something like the offense needs to pretend like the entire game is the second half. And he's right. You look at some of these second halves for the offense, and then I went and looked, and I think Green Bay was 4th in second half points per game this year. This was one of those 28 in the second half after 7 in the first 30 minutes. That was fun. Love gets the better of Rodgers, although it's hard to do people will do it. That will be the headline in some of these stories, videos, Love outduels Rodgers. And, Love was sensational. I don't want to give Rodgers a crutch, but again, that offensive line, that core of weapons outside of DK Metcalf, it's a little tough sledding. But on this night, Jordan Love was throwing laser beam after laser beam in the second half. A lot of them to Tucker Kraft, a few of them to Christian Watson. Romeo Doubs had some nice plays. Green Bay gets the win, 5-1-1. This was, I think, outside of, take Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota out of it, this game and the Philly game in a couple weeks were really the two I circled when the schedule came out. I was like, Yes. Aaron Rodgers, Sunday Night Football. Philly defending champions beat you in week 1 in Brazil, beat you in the playoffs last year. Monday Night Football in November. Those were the 2 I circled outside of, division games. And Green Bay got this one. Huge. Just, you want to see that offense that we saw in the last 30 minutes. Do it for 60 minutes. The ever-elusive chase of perfection. You're never going to have a coach say that we were perfect. Those last 30 minutes, it was damn close. Packers get the win. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Always appreciative of all the support. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. We'll see you next time.